Let's start with the second block of today. In the second block, we'll welcome Jelle IJntema and Maja Čurić. Jelle is our first speaker of this block. So let me introduce him a bit. He is a Dutch artist, photographer, webmaster, and also singer and songwriter. So, really curious combination. And Jelle, you also have working experience also as a theater technician, lighting designer, and performer. So I'm really curious about your talk because you just recently created a virtual museum. And in this project, I see that you could combine all your passions and activities, how to create really great experience for the visitor. And I'm really curious about not only about your joys, but also about the pains of creating, because it can be really great learning for all of us. So welcome here at the conference, welcome on the stage, and it's yours.
Okay, thanks for the introduction as well. Thank you for having me. It's a really great honor, and I'm happy to be here. I'm going to show you what I did in the last, almost a year now, which started off like anything else started off. So I'm going to share the presentation. I'm going to move out of the way for now. Hang on, I have to share the sound as well, because, right. The presentation, the story I'm going to tell you is called Building an Online Experience, but it's going to be also about, hang on, I have to check that one, there we go, about an artist's journey. Because every project, every story starts somewhere, and it starts with my work as a photographer in the first place. So this is the work I make. I do dance photography, portraits, and landscapes. You're going to see them all down the road. But first of all, the project started with something very personal. I went through a couple of discoveries of myself, if you will, and I did that using photography. So that meant I had to be brutally honest with myself about who I am as a person, seeing my dark sides, but also discovering my lighter sides and discovering my gold. It's in a nutshell. There's a long story behind it, but this is in a nutshell. So I made these 3 series of photos, and I had like a back catalog already waiting. And then, well, you know what happens. You want to share your work. And at that moment, last year, a pandemic broke out. So like me, like all you, were wondering, well, what are we going to do now? For me, it meant changing the setup. Since I have a background in IT and being a webmaster, I have some experience there. So I immediately thought about, well, what's it going to be and what will people do online? Like, for example, will they watch art online? Will they pay for art online? Can you even, we had that in the previous discussions, panelists also referred to that. Can you watch it? Is it physical? Is it possible to get the perception of art not being physically present in the moment? And then how are you going to present it? So it's going to be a website playing, it's going to be video. Are you going to use 360 VR, or are you going to use a game engine to do that? Is it going to be something you custom made, or is it going to be prefab? I'll walk you through that and let you see how my process went. I wasn't looking for what's already there. So Samuel already referred to this. Google Arts and Culture as this website where you can visit and kind of get behind the stories of the paintings, in this case, Milkmaid. It's an interactive page, web page. We call it a one pager in web terms. So it's a big page. You scroll down and you get different sides of the stories, different details. It's fun. Wasn't quite what I was looking for. I also looked at this. It's the Rijksmuseum in the Netherlands. And I saw other examples as well. And they have a 360 setup. So you rotate the screen and you're kind of more in that physical space. Groningen Museum, another Dutch museum, has the same thing. The Smithsonian, the same thing. Now, what tools can you use after you got the 360 image? And we'll get to that in a bit. What tools could you use to present that? Seekbik is one, Cula is one, Matterport is another one, 3D Vista is another one. And there are prefab options for artists like Kunstmatrix or Exhibit. But what is missing? What is missing in all these examples, for me anyway, as an artist, but also as a viewer? If you look at this picture, it's empty. So, first of all, I'm missing sound. And in the background, you can hear people slowly walking through the museum. The other thing I was missing was people. A lot of examples, like 95% of the examples you see online are empty museums, are empty galleries, where there's no one there. And for me, when I was thinking about this in the early stages, it was like, why am I looking at something that's empty when I'm in the middle of a pandemic, sitting alone in my room? I'm feeling more alone when I walk through an empty experience. So I was like, that's something I want to change. And also that, if you see where we've come from building websites that were plain text to graphical to news-driven to social media, we're going to build experience in the future. We're already doing that, and we're at the, for me, at the turning point where we're going to build more and more and more. So you have to think differently, not only from what kind of information am I presenting to the audience or to the viewer or to the visitor, whatever you want to call them, the user, but also what's the experience around it? So what extra tools like sound or people or 3D models or whatever am I going to use the audience, the viewer, to get a richer experience? So why design something new? I think as an artist, but most people as well, it's about, I just started experimenting. When I moved houses a couple of years ago, I used a very simple 3D program called Sweet Home 3D, free. So download it and you can draw up a room, or you can draw up a museum, whatever you want. And I started experimenting in that. So I built an entrance. I built an info desk and a cloakroom. And I built my first gallery. Now, I had a discussion with someone in the early stages as well, like, why do you want to hang art on the wall? Why not use 360? Because that's where we're going to go in the end. It's going to be a 360 experience. Why do you want to hang something on the wall while you have a blank canvas as a screen that you can use in whichever way you want? And I was like, but I want to have like a physical reference. I want to show you how big the artwork is or isn't. And I want to play with that. So that's why I built a gallery, hang my work on the wall, which is also something as an artist you like to do. You like to present it physically or hang it somewhere. And then it just grew, and I started experimenting like an architect with how much space do I want a visitor to have when he walks into that gallery or into that museum. So I opened the space up. I built a cafe. It's still empty, but I built a cafe. And I built more rooms. In the first setup I made, it was one room. You walk through that room into the next room, into the next, into the next, into the next. And I was like, okay, but now I'm kind of directing the visitor to go down that path. But that's the only path they're going to take. And I wanted to open that up. I wanted to give the visitors the opportunity to get their own route and form it serendipity or form their own journey through the museum. The funny thing is, now when I look at people walking through the museum, that almost the 95% take a different route than I would have taken. But that's how it works. I changed from Sweet Home 3D to Blender, again, an open source or even a free program. So this was the last design I did in Sweet Home 3D. And we're going to skip like 1,500 hours, because that's the amount of work it took before it got finished. This is the final render from Blender. It rhymes, I know. Sweet Home 3D, the first setup. This is the first setup in Blender. And then after that, the final design. And I played a lot with lighting, because that was the biggest, again, in the background, people in the cafe, and you hear someone making coffee. That was, for me, very important to get that across as well. I played a lot with lighting, which for me was the hardest part of the design thing. I'm a design process. I'm a light designer. I worked in theater, so I know how to work with it. But although it behaves the same way in a digital form, in 3D form, it's difficult because you overlight things, you underlight things, you want to give some direction with light, and it works with reflection. So in the first setup, as you can see here, I had a very dark floor, which I like particularly because I love those kinds of floor, but it made the whole experience, the whole room too dark. So I went looking for thousands and thousands of different materials before I found someone, which I wouldn't lay in my normal room, but work perfectly in a museum because it's light. You can watch across it. You don't have to notice it, but it's there. The first room I was talking about, I made a new design because I wanted to open the space up as well. So in this, like again, it was one direction. So it served its purpose because you can only go that way, but I want to open it up. And in the final design, I did something different as well. So I opened it up, I hanged lights on top of the ceiling, again in the background, the music, the sound from an art gallery or a museum, if you have. And being in 3D offered me a lot of possibilities I wouldn't have had as an artist, well, maybe ever. Because I could open and I could build something that wouldn't physically be possible with my budget anyway. And it offered me the possibility to go underground. So I was looking for my third series, the gold series of the portraits, self-portraits, where would I hang them? And I first had them situated next to me, next to the first room with the self-portraits. And I was like, no, but it feels separated. It doesn't, the flow isn't there. So I can build a stair. I can go underground. I can build a room there. It needed light strips to give people, visitors, some reference of where the floor was, because I heard in the early stages that people felt lost in the whole room. So that was an issue. But you can also, like in this room with dance pictures, in the end of the room, there's a door to the next room. So you can play with that. And one of the things I found out fairly early was that if you work with an online presence like this, you want to kind of trigger people to go further. So just that hint of a picture, just a small picture so people don't see the immediate picture when they're looking, makes them want to go in, makes them want to go further. The last of it, I have dance pictures in there, the self-portraits that are in there, and there's travel pictures or landscape photography. This was the first design I made for the big room because I wanted something to be different from the first rooms that were enclosed. And if you can back up a bit, I have to back up real strong. There we go. In one of the first designs I did was also that, yeah, there it is. If you look at so you have that hallway, and the rooms are enclosed with very big walls, so very massive walls. I wanted that enclosed feeling from those rooms as well. But later on, and now we're gonna skip, hopefully pretty quick, I wanted to do something different from the landscapes. So travel photography and landscape photography has to be with being in an immense space, openness. So this was the first test, and what I came up with in the end was this: two big round halls where you can walk around in and feel kind of engulfed, but also opened up by the space it offers you. again, these pictures are big. So when you're standing close, it's like 7 to 13 pictures stitched together as one panorama. So you can really see the details when you're up close. The other thing, and I'm coming back to the extras you want to give, which I wanted to give the visitors, was the impression of human beings. So they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be real. You can scan everybody right now, but this was far enough. Well, I wanted to kind of design and build scenes as well. So he's stretching out his hand. She's having a coat over her arm, which is a normal interaction people would have in a museum. These two people are having a conversation at the table. And yesterday I was looking at that and was like, what is she thinking and what is she saying? And I love it when it happens that you can put something in there that isn't really there, but you've made happen. So just in short, the workflow was, I made a 3D design. I exported it as 360 pictures, so panoramic pictures. Then used the tool to I'll get back to that, kind of a tour. So they call it virtual tours for a reason. It comes from real estate, so you see it there, but we're going to use it. It's being used, like I showed in the Smithsonian, and all the museums are using it as well. But you can enrich them. So I made a tour with that. I published it online and I'm selling tickets. Now, coming back to those considerations and my experience so far. Will people watch art online art? Yeah, they will. And once people do, the feedback I've gotten from the museum so far and from the exhibition so far has been really heartwarming in a way that people, because there's a text that gives kind of a background to why I took those pictures, what they mean to me, and there's hidden secrets in the museum as well. And when people find them, they feel touched by them, and that's what I wanted to bring across. So I'm not only an artist, but I'm also a storyteller. And this digital platform gives me a new way to tell a story or to let people discover their own story. Have people come by the masses? No. I did one thing, I made a decision, I might change it in a couple of weeks or months. I made a decision at the start that was they have to pay to get in a museum, which is if you look at like everything we do online is free. And I was like, we as artists give away so much material, give away so much of our creation for free. Why? I wanted to experiment with that. And I hope that in the future, more people will follow the same route. Because I've put like 1,500 hours in that. It's something worth paying for, in my opinion. But it gives a blockade. So you see that people come onto the website, see maybe the free part of the museum, and then turn off and then say, okay, it's enough. You have the perception of being in front of a screen again while you're in front of a screen all day, which puts people off. Once they're in there, they're fine and they're enjoying themselves. So there's still a couple of obstacles we have to, and it's getting used to the medium and the way to present art or an experience as well. That's going to change in the future. I chose 360. VR game engine was too difficult to hardware intense, and I chose to build something custom, as you saw. So biggest lesson, in short, it's a lot of work. I had the time to do it, but it took me, 9 months or something like that in full-time job. You have to invest in a graphics card or use a render farm. Use real measurements. Don't be like me and say, oh yeah, but I can make that person like 220 long and that will be okay. No, in the end, it was like, that's out of shape. That doesn't work. And I had to change a couple of things. So that was a bit of a challenge. Real textures or as real as, because that has to do with rendering. Real sounds, if you can. Plan ahead. My museum has like 200 cameras, 200 panoramic cameras set up. So I had to really think, okay, where's someone going to stand when they watch the panorama? How far is it going to be away from the picture and stuff like that? So plan ahead, think about how you want people to walk through that museum, which options you want them to have. specific to Blender, use collections, few layers, and ICS models. I'll skip that, but use them. And for everything else, there's this online channel by Blender Guru. You can find everything out there by using Blender and how to work with it and building like donuts and teddy bears or whatever. Have fun. I did. It was immensely addictive. Just being able to present my art in a digital way. I made some photo books, and I had the moment that, but can I put my photo books on a shelf in a museum? Yeah, I can. And that kept me going time and time after again. So that was like real fun. And I have a special invite for you. I'm going to give you my contact details in a bit. The first 10 persons that contact me through a LinkedIn, via LinkedIn or email, will get a free ticket to my museum. And the other ones will get 50% off, and it isn't really cheap, so it isn't really expensive. So no worries, if you're not in there, you'll be fine. So please mention Flynn in the message, and here are my contacts. You probably have to, if you can scan that picture as well, and you get to my details. Otherwise, take a screenshot, or the organization will probably share it. So I hope I was in time, because I didn't really time this one. Thanks anyway, and for me, it's like questions.
Thanks a lot, Jelle. It's like you're a half marketeer, right?
Thanks.
Because you know the question of paying for online art is really. I'm really glad that you raised it up, and
yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the first question about money, let's say.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious, you have the sneaker peek for people who are not sure if they want to buy a ticket. So
yeah.
You can actually enter the museum and see the cafeteria, talk to the let's say talk to people.
Yeah.
But like you are already in the space. So do you actually know how many people drop off during that sneaker peek?
Yeah, I think that's about 90% or something like that. It's a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And it's hard to figure out when people are watching. Like if you see if you see an advert or you see something and you watch on your mobile phone, it's in my opinion, it's too small to really get into the experience. And you might be like, I'm going to do that later. Mm-hmm. So you can't, there's a couple of things you have to think about as well. What kind of screen are you watching it on? So people actually have to be on a computer screen or a laptop screen or a tablet. Tablet will work too, to get some of the experience I designed. So it's an obstacle when you're watching on a mobile phone. People, yeah, skip there. And I'm glad they went in, and I'm glad they were interested. So for me, as getting known in making photos and making this work is great. But yeah, I'm not getting rich here.
Yeah, no, I'm really curious, because I think that's what everyone has in their heads, but it's very difficult to figure out how to make money to pay for online art, especially if big institutions are giving the content for free.
Yeah.
And people might be overloaded with all the free content.
Yeah, but you kind of question, is that a sustainable model?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because the museums live from their income, their admission tickets as well. So they can do it now, and they can do it for a year, but it's going to end someday. Somebody's got to pay for that.
Mm-hmm. And that is really like great question also for the audience. So maybe even an opinion on this. We have the chat, so feel free to write down your opinion into the chat. And we actually have a question in the second poll that we prepared for you. So we will ask about the money, don't worry. So yes, and like maybe another question I want to ask, because in your gallery, you really take the offline experience and copied into online. And I'm really I really like the way that you mentioned people around, that you are actually, you don't have to interact with them, but you see them, how they behave, or the sound and the lighting, you know, that's like also another very important element. So and also you did really good research, you know, what is available online from that, you know, virtual tools. So why did you decide to do it so realistically?
It was a conscious decision that if you want to get into that experience, you have to offer something that for me anyway, it reassembles the real reality, what we call reality anyway. So that's why I work with a lot of wood textures, so that the moment you walk in there, it's like, but I know what that should feel like if I were to touch that. I know what I probably even would smell like walking into a new gallery all made of wood, and sounds and stuff like that. So if you offer the audience, the viewers, something that resembles reality, they are, in my opinion, are more easily persuaded to get into that experience of being in a gallery or a museum like that. And the fun thing is that, and I have that time and time again, when I show people what I've made and I talk with them about it, they're like, oh, but can I rent that space? And where is that built? Can I visit that? So the way that people kind of almost, well, they believe my gimmick, they believe my dream, like, okay, but it's not real, but it feels real. So that's something I also wanted to bring across. So that's why I put a lot of time in making it as real as possible. Because if you want to make it like a pixel perfect, that's hardware intensive, too hardware intensive for my taste. So yeah.
And when you were designing that online space, did you had in mind the single visitor or also the groups that could, you know, watch the space together? Because, you know, I'm also curious about how to bring groups of people into online, for example, families or
friends and stuff like that, friend groups. I thought about that, and with a project like this, I achieved like 60-70% of what I wanted to achieve, and there's like 30% that's like the cherries on top. And one of them is that, especially with my self-portraits, they're very personal, and they bring intense emotions across. Which I would love to do is have kind of a questionnaire online that you can use when visiting with a couple of people together. So have a discussion about what does that picture mean to you? What the emotion, what does that bring across? So I would love it if, and I actually wrote it down somewhere, that people would come in pairs or with 4 people at once, sharing one screen, just like we're doing now. You can do that on Zoom, give one person the control, or just do it all together. So I would love to make that happen, because I think, especially in the way we work with Zoom as a medium or online as a medium as well, I think we have to think about how we interact, how we use this medium, and how we can have conversations online. And I had, like, in the early days of the pandemic, I had an online art viewing, 10 completely different strangers to me. And we started analyzing art online, 10 people in screen, the gallery view. And I was like, oh, but I have the fun of not knowing what's going to happen. I'm meeting new people. And I'm learning something about how people watch at art. I thought that was brilliant. So, yeah, it's still on the bucket list or the wish list, if you may. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can imagine it's lots of work. So, you know, especially only one person that does everything.
It's it's a lot of work, and I had to stop somewhere. It was because I could have built for a couple of years on, and it probably never got finished. So that's it.
when you did that research about the online exhibitions,
Yeah.
have you noticed a really unusual approach, or really good example that you could highlight that was something like the example even for you?
I want to say no, because that sounds like I designed it all myself. No, there was one example which I didn't actually view because it was in VR. There's a graffiti artist called Rhone, Rhone. And what he did, well, there were actually two examples. What he did was he built a VR experience. So you put on your VR glasses and you walk through empty spaces, derelict urban spaces that were like, and his artwork is in that space. I thought that was brilliant. So that's my dream, where I want to take my museum or my experience as well. So that was one. The other one was, again, a game where they had live actors in the game. So again, VR, but there were, on the other side of the world in America, there were like 7 actors in costumes playing roles in the game. And I thought that was brilliant as well. So those were two things I had in mind when designing. Okay, I want to build a space where something can happen like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think they'll check it, and
yeah,
we will also share the links to the chat once we find them.
yeah, I'll put them up there in just a sec. So I'll.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks a lot. And actually, no, when I look at your bio, like, you are a man of many activities.
Yeah.
So maybe can you tell us a bit more about your journey, and actually what were because I'm curious about the important moments that really shaped you and bring you where you are right now, so you can combine all the experiences that you gained.
That's again, that's a big question. You asked Samuel as well, was one like that on another topic. I think for me, so I've worked a lot of jobs, and I have a lot of experience in theater, in web design, in communications, online sales, being on stage, singer-songwriter. And what I came to realize as soon as I worked with images, so there was a moment during my life when I finally found the red thread that ran through all the experience I had gathered until then, was that for me it's working with images. So that could be a image I write down in a song or in a poem, but it could also be a design. That could also be a website. That could also be a photo. And what for me was particularly hard when I started working or presenting myself as an artist, creating art in the form of poems, in the form of songs, was that the experience, so it was perfect for me because I needed to have that kind of that vent to get those emotions out of my system. But it didn't, from there on, nothing else happened with it. And don't get me wrong, I performed them and people liked the songs or loved the poems, but it stayed in a kind of a personal cocoon because it was so personal. And the thing that struck me that when I started photographing, the moment I took, and I remember that moment very well. I was in Turkey, I was on holiday, brought my camera, started shooting pictures, developed them there because working with film at that moment. And people looked at a picture of mine and they said, "Oh, that's fruit. That's something you can eat." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's just a beautiful picture. Oh, you can eat that." So it opened up conversations. And because we live in such a visual world, in visual age right now, people can talk about what they see. They can interpret it. And because there's a distance between the image and the viewer, it's easier to work with. So I found that having conversations about what the work I make is actually the thing I like the most in the end. So, and the other thing, that final note, and that comes to the self-portraits that you saw in the presentation as well. That was the first time that, because I'm a visual person, so I always look at things and have my, I think about how it's situated, like the scene in the cafe, or how do you make something happen there. Seeing myself in self-portraits, seeing the darker sides, the lighter sides, and the gold sides, gave me a view, a look into myself that I otherwise wouldn't have had, and helped me to understand who I really am. Yeah, that's something that struck when I made those. I was like, yeah, that's good, and I want to show them, because I think looking at the darker sides and the lighter sides we all have in ourselves is interesting, and it's something we should do. So yeah, so that helped me as an artist as well, and gave me the energy to like, well, let's go and we'll see what happens, and experiment. Just keep on experimenting, because you never know what's going to happen.
You never know that you will create virtual exhibition, right?
No, and I'm speaking to you like I've never met you, and that's like, it's now. So no.
Okay, so let's check who are the lucky 10s who can enter the gallery for free.
Yeah, I will do.
Thanks a lot, Jelle.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me again.
It was really a nice talk. So let's now do the poll. We have the question about money there, so we'll see.